Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of African Battle Royale. Let's get right into it. Senegal will be making an alliance with Mauritania. And this is actually the first alliance between countries that border each other, so this one actually makes sense. And this alliance isn't just there because they have good relations, although obviously they do. They're also kind of afraid of Mali. Tanzania will be making an alliance with Sudan. And this alliance is basically not just there because they have good relations, although obviously they do. It's there to preserve peace. Sudan doesn't want people to declare war on them because there's a lot of countries that want land from them. And Tanzania doesn't like war and just wants everyone to be happy and peaceful with each other. So they kind of have different reasons for wanting peace, but that's why they're making an alliance. Congo will be invading Southwest. And it's been a while since we've had a one-on-one war, and I feel like there's probably not that many countries that would be willing to join in on this war on either side. So this is probably going to stay as a one-on-one war between Congo, who's trying to expand, and Angola, who's trying to not be expanded into. Unfortunately for Angola, their exclave over here is immediately taken because it's literally just bordered by Congo. And they're starting to be invaded into by Congo, and it's not going very well for them. They just basically are very weak, and Congo's been building up their military for a while. They've had to invade a lot of countries, and in general, it's just not going well for Angola. They're actually managing to hold out for a really long time, which is embarrassing for Congo because they thought that this war would be over by now. But Angola's still holding out, and they're trying to get other countries to join them, but they're failing at that. Angola is just holding out for too long, and so eventually Congo and Angola will have to sign a peace treaty with each other, even though Congo wanted to annex all of Angola. And these are Congo's new borders with Angola. Botswana will be invading southeast. So Botswana will be invading into South Africa. And the reason that Botswana is invading into South Africa is because Botswana basically yelled at South Africa for being a dictatorship, which they are in this timeline. Uh, and South Africa started putting troops on their border because of that, and so Botswana wanted to strike first, so they do. And they start moving some troops into South Africa, which South Africa was not expecting. They didn't have that many troops on the border, which is why this is even able to happen. But it's okay because South Africa is stronger than Botswana significantly, so they are able to pretty much deal with the Botswanan threat. Botswana tries to get Zimbabwe on their side, but Zimbabwe decides to stay neutral. And even worse, South Africa forces Lesotho and Eswatini to get involved on their side of the war, which just makes things even worse for Botswana. Botswana's last hope is that they'll be able to get Namibia involved, which will create another distraction for South Africa. And in fact, they do get Namibia involved in the war. And they start invading into South Africa over here, but Namibia is even weaker than Botswana is. And so South Africa starts moving troops over here, and it's kind of over for Namibia. However, Botswana is able to get some more land from South Africa and even take a little bit of South African land. And this front line is not very stable, and it stays for like a month like this before South Africa starts making some gains again. And at this point, Botswana and South Africa sit down for a negotiated peace settlement. And the South African Empire continues to expand. Kenya will be invading Southwest. So you remember that alliance that was formed between Tanzania and Sudan a little while ago? It was originally supposed to be formed between Tanzania and Kenya. A few other countries, including Sudan, were invited to the meeting, which is why Sudan ended up joining it. But Kenya and Tanzania had a huge falling out at the meeting where they were supposed to create the alliance over something like really silly that they probably shouldn't have had a fight over. But the end result of that is that Kenya will hate Tanzania enough to want to invade into them. So that's exactly what they do. As Kenya starts invading into Tanzania, and unfortunately for Tanzania, Kenya is pretty quickly able to get Rwanda as also involved in this conflict. as Rwanda starts moving troops into the eastern parts of Tanzania, and Kenya and Rwanda are able to get rid of the Ugandan lands that Tanzania took, as well as getting naval victories in Lake Victoria to surround Tanzania there. Sudan is trying to convince Uganda to allow or to join the war so that they can actually help their ally out, because right now they're having to ship troops through here, which is helping, and in fact it does allow Tanzania to start invading back into Kenya over here, but it's not helping as much as it probably should be. And so eventually, after some tough negotiations, Uganda joins in on the war, and this is going to kind of change the tide of the war, because now Sudanese and Ugandan troops start taking back some land from Tanzania, and really just Tanzania basically gets Lake Victoria back, and Rwanda and Kenya start losing on all fronts. Rwanda will negotiate for peace between them because they don't want to be involved in this war, and also because Congo was considering joining. And Kenya is now on their own, but they still basically have a population. The government kind of wants to surrender, but the population really doesn't, which is weird because usually it's the other way around. Um, so the government decides to stay in, even though they know it's the wrong decision for them because they would be thrown out of power if they didn't. And they basically go to Somalia and Ethiopia and say, "Are you really going to let this coalition take us over?" And Somalia is like, "We've got our own problems," and Ethiopia is like, "You know what? I'm actually closer to Sudan, and thanks for that because now I have a justification to join them." And so now it's really over. Kenya just completely falls, and the Kenyan population is fighting back. So even after the government stops existing, it's pretty clear Kenya won't be able to exist after this war because their population is very angry about it, and Kenya will fall. And these are the new borders of East Africa. Ethiopia got kind of greedy, I must say, but let's continue. Guinea-Bissau will be invading north. And obviously, Guinea-Bissau is not on their own here. They would never try to do that, although they do move troops into Senegal, and it looks like they're kind of being abandoned by their allies before a few countries help them out. So obviously, Guinea and Guinea-Bissau are pretty close to each other, or close with each other, I should say. And then, as a surprise move, Gambia will get involved in this war against Senegal. Obviously, Mauritania is going to be involved in this. And pretty quickly, Gambia is seized. Senegal has wanted to invade Gambia for a while now, but Gambia still has their mouth of the river that they own. And right now, Senegal is struggling to defend against the Ghanaian invasions from the south as more of Gambia starts to get liberated, and all of a sudden, Senegal is now on the defense. However, Senegal manages to basically hold the line for long enough that they managed to convince other countries to start to join the war. Most importantly, Mali, who quickly starts sending troops into Guinea. And Guinea basically was not ready for this at all. They had most of their troops in Senegal. So when they start getting invaded by Mali, they are pretty quickly cooked as Mali reaches all the way to the border with Sierra Leone, who also decides to join the war to try and get some land as Guinea starts getting invaded. Ghana is actually trying to get this war to stop, and they're trying to negotiate an end to the war, but it doesn't seem like that's going to happen, as Liberia also joins the war against Guinea, and at this point, Guinea just loses all of their land over here. And Senegal is starting to push back. Gambia gets fully invaded, and Senegal signs into law before they even push the Red Alliance out of their land that Gambia is fully going to be annexed. And at this point, Guinea panics and surrenders, and Guinea-Bissau is not long for this world, as they basically, it's not even that they don't want to surrender, it's just that their invasion is so quick and so thorough that they don't even have time to surrender. So let's see what this peace treaty will end up looking like. And these are the new borders of West Africa after the war. Guinea-Bissau was allowed to exist because the Senegalese government basically had a division between political parties on whether they should fully annex Guinea-Bissau or leave it alone because it probably wanted to surrender. And so that basically it was a compromise to take half of Guinea-Bissau and leave the other half, which really satisfies no one, but that's what happened. Mozambique will face a rebellion. And Mozambique will actually face a rebellion in their coastal territories, where a lot of the people don't like how they lost the war, and they want to basically fight this rebellion. And this rebellion is basically on the grounds of fighting another war against Zimbabwe to gain a lot of their land back. So obviously Zimbabwe isn't going to like that rebellion, and they're basically going to ask the Mozambique government, "Hey, do you want us to help you with that rebellion? Because we really don't want that rebellion to win." And Mozambique's obviously going to say yes. So Zimbabwe is going to start invading into Mozambique, and this is going to basically crush the rebellion, as Mozambique forces also help to crush the rebellion pretty quickly and pretty easily. But then Mozambique basically tells Zimbabwe to get their troops out, and Zimbabwe's like, no, I don't think they will. As Zimbabwe starts, or I guess continues to invade into Mozambique, they get Malawi to join them. As Malawi, I don't know how to pronounce that honestly, but they start invading to try and get some of their old territory back. As they're doing actually quite well at that because the Mozambique government is cooked. And Zimbabwe basically wants to annex all of Mozambique. And obviously, Tanzania doesn't want this to happen, and they're starting to supply the Mozambique government. But it might be a little too late because Zambia just got involved in the war and pretty quickly took all of this territory. And Zimbabwe is taking land from the Mozambique government. And at this point, Zimbabwe basically sends an ultimatum, not to the Mozambique government, but to Tanzania, saying, "Hey, if you help us invade into the rest of Mozambique, you can take it. Otherwise, we're just going to continue into you." And being the cowards that they are, Tanzania will accept that ultimatum. And so they'll start invading into Mozambique. And from there, it's like super done for Mozambique because their ally just switched sides on them. And so they are out of this series. And these are the new borders of what used to be Mozambique. Malawi is squished between three giants. Angola will be invading north. It's revenge time. Angola is going to invade into Congo, and they're going to get everything they've ever wanted. And all they have to do is hope and dream, and everything they've ever wanted will come to fruition. Rwanda is joining them in this war, so just to make sure that everything goes super well. CAR even starts to join in on this war, and it's not like Congo can fight these three powers all at once, can they? Well, I mean, Congo and Rwanda just signed a secret agreement to give Rwanda a bit of land in exchange for them leaving the war. And this actually killed two birds with one stone for Congo, because that land was land that was thinking of rebelling anyway. And while this is going on, CAR is continuing to send basically options for Congo to basically agree to peace with them in exchange for losing a bit of territory. Congo is fairly certain they can deal with both of these powers at once, as Angola is just crumbling. But then Gabon does join in on the war, and this is going to be kind of frustrating for Congo because they are losing a decent bit of land to Gabon. So eventually they do accept the CAR's agreement, which leaves them only fighting Gabon and Angola. And while they're struggling to make gains against Gabon, they are not struggling to make gains against Angola, who is still extremely weak. Of course, Zambia gets involved at the last second to try and get some land out of this, because why not? And Namibia thinks about getting involved, but then South Africa tells them not to, so they don't. And at this point, things are just going very badly for Angola, although Gabon is actually still managing to take some land from Congo right above the screen. So Congo might have to worry about that. But for now, Angola has basically lost any possibility of winning this war, and so they'll basically ask for surrender as long as they don't get destroyed and fully annexed, and that'll be rejected. So then they'll surrender even if they do get annexed, as long as their people don't get punished, and that'll be accepted. And now Gabon is going to have to face the full fate of the Congolese military, and let's just say things don't go well for Gabon. And when things start to look like this is when Gabon realizes they probably shouldn't have joined the war at all. So let's see what all this looks like. And watch as Angola has been divided up. Last event of this episode. Libya will be invading east. So Libya is invading into Egypt. And the reason that Libya is invading into Egypt is because they both have dictatorships, and the dictator of Egypt accidentally said something mean about the dictator of Libya on national television, and that's enough for Libya to want to invade Egypt. So Libya's invasion of Egypt is going pretty well at first, until it isn't, because Egypt is way stronger, and Egypt manages to push back. Sudan then basically tells them both to cut it out, or they'll invade whichever power doesn't agree to cut it out. And Libya agrees to cut it out, but Egypt doesn't agree to cut it out. And that leads to Egypt being invaded by Sudan, just to teach them a lesson. But Egypt is also stronger than Sudan, so this isn't really going to work out very well for Sudan as Egypt starts invading into them. And you can barely see it, but I swear they are invading into them. And Egypt is also invading into Libya, who kind of realizes they made an oopsie and leaves the war. And just to make things a little bit more visible, I've changed the colors because Egypt has also made a peace agreement with Libya. But Egypt is now going down the Nile and basically attacking Sudan, as Sudan is not able to fight back. Then a small Eritrean uprising happens against Sudan, which brings Ethiopia into the war temporarily, simply to combat that, before Ethiopia then leaves the war. While Ethiopia was in the war, though, Tanzania sent some troops up in through Sudan, which are now helping Sudan to fight back against Egypt, especially in the Nile. Although Egypt is fighting in the Sahara, they have special troops that are designed to take the Sahara over, and no one really cares about the Sahara, so it's being taken over fairly well. Then a South Sudanese rebellion pops up right over here, and Sudan is struggling, although they are starting to finally take some actual Egyptian land, and they take the disputed claim between them and Egypt, and things aren't going mildly okay for both sides, although Egypt has just crushed Sudan, and now things are not going well for Sudan, as the South Sudanese rebels make an agreement with Egypt that they're going to start chasing each other, and eventually they meet up, and South Sudan is officially cut off from Sudan. And at this point, Sudan basically begs Ethiopia to join back in, and Ethiopia instead basically threatens Egypt and says, if you don't do a peace treaty that's okay for Sudan, then we will join back in, and that finally gets everyone to the peace table. So let's see what happens. And Sudan has been thoroughly humbled by this, as well as Tanzania, although not by as much. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. But with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.